Hello there, welcome back. We are working on the radial menu today. So we can see that, let's have a look, here it is. So I did a little bit of extra work from the last time I went live. All I did was do some icon animation inside the material, so a little UV scaling and a couple of color things. I also added this center element that reads from the currently active or hovered element, right? And so today what I want to do is get a couple of different variant menus done. We're just going to do UI today. So firstly, let's get the bit of the logic done that allows us to actually have a custom radial on an object. So I guess let's just use this gun, maybe, question mark. I'll see if I can find something more interesting in the static mesh library that I have. These are objects in the environment. It'd be cool if they had like a health kit, but I guess we do not have something like that. The weapon will have to do. So on this actor is a component for BP ping, and we're going to work with this real quick to add a data asset to it. So let's say radial data. Just call this ping data. Okay, so for radial data, let's just add this in. It's a radial data. Got to go and find this asset because I've forgotten what it's called. In our radial system, we have radial data. This asset is of the type BP radial menu data. BP radial menu data. BP underscore radial menu data here. So that'll be an object class. Compile that. What we can do real quick is we can set up a new radial for this quite simply. So this is for our pings, and we'll create one here that's just for weapons. And then all we have to do is assign that into our exposed with this little eyedropper variable. We have this variable here, just apply our radial menu weapons. And so right now what's going to happen is it's going to draw all 5 of these pings that we set up previously. And so what we want it to do is draw something unique. So first off, let's go with just dumping all these and create 3 new elements. Each of these is going to be 120 of the general radius, right? And they are going to be of the type ping, so that's their class type. Just to review that, we had our generic kind of view, and then I think we made a custom ping one that has some extra animation, and it reads from ping data, specifically the ping data that it gets created with. So that uses this context object. All right. Which I think, if I go back to pings, is literally the ping data for it. Yeah, DA ping basic. So let's have a basic ping in our objects. Like go here, or maybe we'll actually have the first one as like, I guess, loot. And in fact, just to save some time, let's actually just go take a look. We got this enemy one. What kind of things would you see if you middle moused down on a weapon? You'd see like, there's loot here, first and foremost. You'd see an option for maybe like, let's do an ambush here. So maybe I'll just do 2 options. We'll call this one ambush. What other options do we have? Let's use this exclamation mark. So that'd be cool. Just say ambush here. And so in our weapon radial, we actually won't use a third one, and these will actually be 180 degrees each. And this will be our ambush data. Okay, so that's out of the way. Next thing to do, so that's set up on there, it's on the component, it knows what this is, and the next thing to do is just to get our ping system that is triggered through a gameplay ability to recognize that asset. So here what we do is we wait for the inputs to be released in order to determine if it was a ping under a certain amount of time or radial. When we create a radial here, we want to get the object that we're highlighting in this case. I think what we do is execute a ping trace here, and that's how we get the ping component from this object. So I might need to rearrange some of the functionality in here. Basically what we want to do is be able to get this ping component, and from here we can go and get that radial data, and then that's what we'll draw when we have this create radial menu here, which at the moment just creates a generic radial. We'll create it with a certain type. So in our radial menu class, our base class, abstract class, this radial menu data here, if we actually expose this, go back to our ping, you can see that we can actually give this an option. And so when we call this, we want to check if we're actually looking at something. And I think one really easy way, potentially, to do that inside of our ping is to use this get ping, which is going to get the thing that's closest to the center of our screen. So let's try that. If there is a valid highlight ping, let's promote this to a local variable, L radial data. Let's move all of this out of the way. Sequence here. Our default radial data is pings, but if we have a highlight ping, we will update that reference to this new reference, and then that's what's going to get drawn. So let's see if that works for us. Right now, it just does the normal ping, so let's find out why that is. I know why. It's because we haven't actually pinged it. Then we come in here and we attempt to set the center widget. Interesting. Radial menu data, not valid. Okay. So this is interesting. We are receiving a ping, but it's a brand new ping that we've created. So that's the incorrect use of that function. So we can't use the highlight ping here in this way. What we need to do, well, we can keep this logic, but we can't use this. What we need to do is take the ping trace here, and rather than immediately executing a creation of a ping, we need to just return something. So let's create a return node here. We'll return the ping location. Don't know why we're taking an in location here, because generally speaking, is there another way to, I'm just going to double check, is there another way to create a ping? Go and find references in the library. So we're just double checking if we can change the signature of this function. And in order to check that that's a safe operation, we want to find all the references to that function. Stuck in my teeth from lunch. Kind of sucks. Okay, so there is no use of location. And so I would prefer to not take a location. And actually the location, it's interesting that this can come in without a ping component. I find that, yeah, because I see how this works now. So when we do a trace, we attempt to get a ping component. This is not guaranteed to be valid. This is like maybe ping component, and it goes in. And so what I might prefer to do is actually give this actor throw this actor in here, put this in here. And if, well, firstly, we don't need to validate everything, but what we do want to do is validate this. You can get that actor. I like to usually prefix this with in, so it's really easy to find in the right-click menu. So in actor, it's usually right at the bottom for input variables. Get actor location in this case. And we could also opt to get the center. So it's like get the actor bounds, and you can get the origin. And so if you've got an actor that's this big and its origin is at the bottom, if you use the actor bounds origin, you actually get the center point. So I'm actually just I'm going to do that. I think that that's reasonable in this case, in the case that it fails to get a found ping location. Okay. So if we do have a ping component, this is a scene component that we've set up to have a location. So we can use the world location as the target location for the actual resulting ping being created. And down here, we'll use, if we fail to find a ping, we'll use the actor's location and ping data. And because I forgot what this is doing, I should really add a comment. So this is just going to create a default ping. This is the default ping data. Should actually put that in here. As a name, just says default ping data. That goes into LPing data. And then this is create a ping from the target config. Okay. So we have a nice function for that now. Get the data asset from, how can I make this cleaner? I want to make this cleaner. If you hold Shift Delete, you actually retain the lines as well, which is cool. I'm just going to do this to clean that up. And then this is actually create the ping actor. Create the ping actor, delete out of bounds pings. Okay, so back in the previous function here, we do not need that, and we do not need this. We just have the in actor. And so the idea was, I'm just going to return the actor. And so instead of execute ping trace, what we can do is recall this. Get, what would we call this? Hang on a second. In here, this is destroying a ping, and this is doing a new ping. But I don't think I ever handled the case where it doesn't get a hit actor. I suppose if it doesn't get a hit actor, nothing happens. Oh, and if we get a hit actor and it's the world, we're going to be spawning it at the world, which is a problem. So we do need to output hit location, because that will be the world hit location. And we do not want to use the actor origin because there's a chance that we're hitting a building or the world. And we want the hit actor because we want to be able to test upon it. So we'll call this function get trace data, I suppose we'll call it. The event graph here, we do something like if the trace data is valid, create a ping actor. We'll take a vector location. We'll end the ability. If we succeed or fail, we'll end the ability either way. Okay. So that means now I can use this and I can paste in the get ping component and I can put all of this into our radial menu. So when you attempt to do a radial menu, get the trace data. If there is a valid actor, and valid ping component, then we'll use the data from that ping component as our radial data, and then we'll create a radial. So just double check it through our code, get the trace data. This is a hit ignore actor list that I ended up cleaning, didn't need it. Running along, we return, and here we should return null, because otherwise when this returns without a null, it will return the last information that was in this node through what's called blueprint graph caching. So yeah, if you have a return that has information, it's going to return the last information that this graph knew about if you don't explicitly tell it to be something else. So we have get trace data, and if there is a valid hit actor, then we will create a ping. And we will attempt to do all this, which is awesome. Same code as before. Okay, so now when we hit play, we have this ambush here, loot. Okay, cool. So now we have custom radials based on what we're looking at. I don't have the code in yet that actually produces that ping, but we're not too worried about that today. I just wanted to finish that up, and in fact, maybe if I could do it in the next 5 minutes, then we could set up the mouse release ping. So let's give that a go. When we create a radial menu, we set radial here, and in our radial menu, we can get the highlighted. Let's have a look at what's in our radial menu. So w_radial menu. It has some code in it that determines which element that you're hovered on. It does not seem to cache that information. So this is the radial entry at the child index of the angle that we're aiming at. And we set that as the hovered entry inside the radial menu. Last hovered entry. Okay, so we do have that information. Last hovered entry. Okay. So as long as the last hovered entry is valid. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a new function in here that's just get ping data. So what kind of ping do we want to do for this? It's actually not the right way to do this. Because the radial menu's entries should determine what they are going to do. So how we would do this is, I think, in this case, we'll have a function which is execute radial entry, or just run radial entry. do we call this? Execute radial entry logic. We'll just keep it really like explicit, like what we're about to do. In this case, I know that we're going to use that ping when we release the mouse. Or a voice line, or an emote, like a dance, or whatever it might be. And some radials are like equip weapon. You know, you span your radial and you release and you click the weapon. Now, event destruct is actually not a great way to do this, so I'm not gonna force that to be the case inside this radial menu. It's a little bit too prescribed. I'm going to run that execution from here. Execute radial entry logic when we remove the radial from this ping actor. So it's a little bit more, yeah, so we've got the remove radial menu here. Remove it from the parent. So first what we want to do is execute that entry logic through the gameplay ability based on the one that you're actually looking at. Now in a replicated environment, you would actually have to send that information over the network, but we've stopped worrying about that for now, just for the case of speed and efficacy. So execute the radial entry logic. This will get the last hovered entry, assuming there is one. We'll promote that to a local variable. L target entry. And if there is no target entry, then we're going to set target entry to be the first entry in the list. Assuming that's the default, basically. And then from here, inside of our entry, we need to actually add a way for this to trigger an event of some kind. Now, one really nice way of doing this would be to not have to extend the style of the widget, essentially, to instead just run some logic that doesn't require us to create a ton of different styles, right? So here we have a style of a radial entry, and we want it to be abstract as to what it can do, which means that we don't want to put the behavior inside this widget, because if this just does pings and it can't do voice lines or emotes, for example, or change weapon, then you'd have to create a copy of this and change the logic in Blueprint, rather than creating what would be nicer is if we create a separate object, or maybe it could be an ability or something that actually performs that logic. And in this case, I'm going to try and use an object class. So here we'll say radial actions, we'll call it. And we'll just make a new blueprint. We'll do object. We'll just call this BP underscore radial action. As usual, this will be an abstract class that we cannot use as an object, but it will have a function called run, and that's all it will have. From here, we create child blueprint actors, and so we'll have BP radial action. We'll just say ping. We'll add a. How are we going to? Now we need to determine what kind of information this will need in order to perform an action. And usually it's going to at least require some sort of context. And so what I'll do here, again, this will just be an object. And actually, I don't even need to do this. I can do this in the parent inside the run function. Yeah. So the run function now has a context. That is enough for us to override run, cast this, in this case, because it's the ping action, to a ping data. And from here, actually create a ping, which means I can take the create ping actor logic from here, where we actually do this final portion, and take basically all of the inputs, so owner here will be important, and the output can stay as it is. Although we do need to promote this to a local variable L ping. We'll use this variable, just control clicking to move the lines around. Okay, so now if we take all of this and copy that into our action ping and paste it, we'll find out that this type of this type of asset can't create an object, and I always forget about that. Spawn actor. Can't actor from task. Yeah, this object class cannot contain the code that we need it to contain in order to perform this action. Let's try and do it as a task, maybe. Run a gameplay task. Task owner, task. Gameplay task object. Let's try and put that in here instead. So let's try and reparent this to a gameplay task. Nope, not allowed to do that. So let's try and make a blueprint. Gameplay task. Task. So we don't need behavior tree. We've got an editor utility task, a state tree task, and a state tree blueprint base. So we can't create a gameplay task. So we can't do it that way. So one of the remaining options is we do an actor, or we have the gameplay abilities for things that you can do. Changing weapons, doing emotes, pings, voice lines, etc. as gameplay tagged abilities on the ability system. And the way that this whole system then works is we just send a payload into the gameplay ability system that just says like, what would it be? Send gameplay. I think it's called send gameplay event. Send a gameplay event. The payload, I think, can include an object target. Yeah. And it can include a tag. And so we would change the whole system, and it would be a lot of code to do that. I don't want to have to write all that code right now. So instead of doing that, we're going to duplicate a little bit of code, and then I'll clean this up off cam. Okay, so back to the goals. Can't do this radial ping and radial action. That's not going to work. So we have to delete those. Let's go back to our radial menu, see where we got to. We were going to execute a radial entry logic based on the target entry. And in this case, I think we have context. And so this is the context that we wanted. This this entry that has a design does not want to be coupled with the action that it performs. So we still need to move the action of creating a ping or doing a voice line or an emote out of here, and then we can do some different designs for the rest of the hour. So how can we split this out? I don't want to spawn actors if I can afford if I can afford that. The method of doing a gameplay ability through a payload is a good one. Wait for gameplay event. Gameplay event, send gameplay event. So I can send a gameplay event. Sends a gameplay event also creates a prediction window. Oh, right, yeah. I can't listen to a gameplay event inside a function. It has to be in here. Wait for event. So we can either wait for a gameplay event. It waits until a specified tag is triggered. And by default, this looks at the owner of this ability for the tag, I suppose. It will keep listening as long as and trigger once this false. Wait gameplay event to actor. Wait until the specified gameplay tag event is triggered on a target ability system component. It will keep listening as long as it's this. If you use an ability graph, this async action will wait even after activation ends. It's recommended to use wait gameplay event instead. Sure. Okay. So this is GA ping. So we can just wait for, and we'll create ourselves. We'll put this in the default gameplay tags, but it would technically be nicer to create a new file. But it doesn't look like we can create a new file here, so you have to do that manually. But yeah, we can use default gameplay tags, and we can say something like radial action. What do we do that? Let's just call it gas dot ping. And then we'll also have gas dot voice, for example. And so this one would wait for gas dot ping. Boop. And anytime that occurs, it would actually execute this logic. So, and this will stop waiting if the ability has ended, which means I do actually want the other one. Wait gameplay event actor. This async action will wait even after the activation of the ability ends. I want this to happen after we've committed this ability. See, that means it needs to be committed at least once. Okay, we need to make a new gameplay ability. So this is a ping, and we'll make a new gameplay ability. So our next gameplay ability, let's what class is this? This is just a generic gameplay ability. Okay, cool. Gameplay ability here. Okay. GA underscore do ping. I need to come up with a better naming convention for this. What would this one be called? This is when you release the mouse. This ability is when you release the mouse. We want to essentially trigger this ability in this case. And the same, this do ping ability can also be triggered from a radial menu, or other things. But in our first case, we have a gameplay ability ping and the output ping that will occur. So when we release our mouse, we could call this like player ping, or manual ping. How would I name this? I would name this smartly. I would spend too long naming this. Naming is important. Okay, so we are in the act of decoupling the UI from the gameplay event and then supporting the radial menu to also do it. We have an ability that does a ping ability. And then we have an actual ping action. So we could call this GA ping action. So we have our GA ping and our ping action. So that works. So if we have a look at our ping action, this is where I've done that the wrong way around. Actually, no, I have. Have I? No. This is the action. This is the ability. This is on mouse release. We will do a ping. The ping action itself, what it does is it it will immediately execute, hopefully, if we can do that. Instance per execution, no instance per actor. This blueprint is not an actor, and therefore the target actor must have something, which will be the avatar. And anytime that that occurs, we will use this, the target of the event and the optional object, target of the event, which has got to be the owner. But we'll probably use optional object 1 as casting to ping data in this case. Okay, let's go and fix up our origin ping. So in here, we get this trace data and we create a ping actor. What we actually want to do now is send a gameplay event to our avatar. And the payload will be everything that's inside here, basically. And this logic will get moved. But then we won't be able to track the pings, which is a problem. We should have... So in C++, you can actually add payloads to this, like, for example, a location. So it's annoying that I can't do that. At which point we would move pretty much all the logic. So this trace that occurs here and this, we would actually move. So we would just trigger the GA ping, and we wouldn't need to give it any other context information, and we would just end the ability. And from here, this gameplay ability is going to respond and create two matching functions for the trace data. Okay. So we're just moving things around for a second. This is going to help us with the code a little bit. Draw debug type. Sure. We'll have one of those. Copy all of this. Get ping component. Yeah, we're going to need that function as well. The pure function comes from this actor. We have some local variables in here, and we have a default ping data as well. Default ping data. Let's just make sure that's set up. Basic. Yeah, so now we have the problem of we can't get a return from that gameplay task. Or not, it's not a task really, but it's kind of a task. So when we trigger this gameplay event, there is no output to help us manage literally anything really. So what I might do is use self as the target here. I can't use self, it's an actor, optional object. Okay, we can use an optional object. Self, cool. And the reason to do that is that we basically send over the, what we could call the ping management ability over to the thing that actually produces the ping. And that will allow us to do some things. So in the event graph, this optional object here is not the ping. This optional object, if we cast this, to GA_ping. Event received. We'll call this ping. Is this the ping handler? It's our ping ability. This is GA create ping. That sounds better. In our create ping, cast this. Ping ability. Nope, cast this. Cast to ping ability. To a variable. Owning ping ability. And from there, we will run this logic. Create the ping actor, we get the owning ping ability, and we get its current pings. This might not be the best way to do this anymore. It's very prototypey at this point. And we're not creating UI, we're creating code, which in the new year, I'm going to be producing a lot of the code, well, majority of the code, if not all of the code, off cam, or using other templates, because I think these streams devolve into a lot of blueprint programming. And that doesn't fit the jive, doesn't vibe very well. What we need to do in this class is track ping. Add in here, go track ping, cache that, owning ping ability, track ping, the L ping. This will hopefully make everything a little bit cleaner. We are doing a little bit of back and forth, which I'm not a big fan of. But this is the only way to go back to the parent, or to return something from the ability, I should say. So in here, when we get to track a ping, let's go to our create ping function, and we just need to copy essentially this logic into here. New item, might rename that in ping actor. This is code that we made on other streams, and I'm just like, I often like to refactor and move things around so they're a little bit more decoupled, I suppose. Okay, so what issues have we got in here? Ping range. Okay. What is the ping range? 10,000 units. So you can see now how this create ping sort of like function or handler is holding the sort of process of creating the ping at the end point, whilst this ping ability is actually only going to be responsible for doing, like summoning it basically from an input. It's going to determine whether or not you want to do that. And it's going to basically determine if it wants to be a ping or a radial. Event tag, we don't really need an event tag. It's supposed to be in here, ping here. Okay, so now I just need to go through and clean some of this up. Bind references by name. When we create a radial menu, we get the trace data and we create a radial menu. Sure. Sounds reasonable. When we remove the radial menu, we execute the radial entry logic. which in this case is going to get the owning pawn, send a gameplay, no, send gameplay event to actor here, and we'll use a new tag. This is basically what I was saying at the start of the stream. We'll add a tag to our radial data, entry data, or ping data. Which way around would we do this? Comes from the context. Context is going to need to give us that data. In our radial menu data, how does that look? This is DA ping basic. It's a basic ping. It's the visual information, not the code information. As far as I remember, this is all the visual information. So I don't want to put the gameplay logic in there, or the business logic in that one. I do want to put the business logic into here, I think. Widget class entry span, context object. Gameplay event tag. Gameplay tag. And we could say by default that just as a reference is ping. And it saves me doing a bunch of edits. If I now go and compile the parent, I'll get that ping in here. So now every entry can do something different if it wants. I can have one entry be a ping, one be a emote, and another be something else. And they can actually share visual information. So they can look the same in terms of it being like this icon and this color and this text. But it would represent different ability types. So that's nicely decoupled, question mark, to some degree. Should have just saved it. I should have just saved. That would have been smart. Okay, so we're 49 minutes in. So far what we've done is we've got contextual radial menus for objects in the game world, or other actors in general. So we can have a radial menu that's specific to our pings, and a to just walking around the world and holding down the middle mouse button. And we can have a separate radial menu if we're looking at a particular object in the world. That we got done in the first like 10-15 minutes. From there, what we decided to do, because releasing the mouse on in either of those cases whilst the radial was up actually doesn't do anything, is we decided let's make the actual gameplay result of that. And we're almost there with that logic. So let's get back to our ping handling gameplay ability. So in here, when we've released the input, which is this line here, if we have a radial menu, we will execute radial entry logic from that entry. And in fact, what we could do instead, get the context, get the last hovered. Yeah, we don't want to. We could get the last hovered entry, get the tag, or get the data, sorry. I guess this doesn't have a context of that. Okay, get entries. Radial menu, yeah, okay. So this is kind of gnarly, I suppose. I don't really want the UI menu to execute this radial entry logic. I want you to release your mouse, and then this ability handle what happens. by getting some context from the Radial menu. So let's open up that Radial menu and just make a new function. Instead of saying execute Radial entry logic, we'll actually have a return function. We'll call this get Radial entry info. And that will return the target entry, which actually isn't important. It's the data of the entry that is important. Let's check what kind of data that this has. It has the context object. As far as I know, as far as I recall, as we're creating these entries, constructing the entries, we give it a context which comes from the entry here. Cool. And then it has that gameplay tag. Okay, get Radial entry info, get context. Sure, I mean, this, not a massive fan. Index, get, oh, find, what am I talking about? Find item gives us an index. From here, we can reference the data entries and we can get the data that we actually care about based on which one we're hovering. Okay, cool. And then executing the business logic still happens inside the gameplay ability itself. So here we get the Radial entry info. We are later going to remove this from the screen. So just do that there. Just clean this graph up a little bit. Okay. So now we have the information. We can get the tag. Okay. Break. We can get the tag here. We can send that over as a gameplay event. So now these entries can be like voice, blah, blah, blah. They could be anything. And the payload, because when we produce a ping, we are going to need a payload. It's going to be this context object here. I'm just going to leave a note for myself because that is quite abstract, so it needs explanation. Context over Radial entry equals its data, i.e. DA underscore ping, DA underscore voice, DA underscore emote, DA underscore weapon. You know, basically you got a Radial menu. It has some context of what its information represents. That context is often a data asset. It could be something else. It could be an actor, for example, if it needed to be. But that's the thing that's generally going to hold the information, which the endpoint action, which in this case we only have a ping action, but we are talking about making other types of action. So get the owning player pawn of a user widget. No. Get the avatar actor info, and that is the actor that we run this on. Okay, so we should be there now. Like the refactoring is done. We can move on. Should be all good to go. Let's just double check our convictions. Radial menu, do a trace, hit an actor, get a pin component. That's the Radial data. Doodle-doo, running through here. Creates a Radial. Moves the Radial. Triggers a gameplay event based on the hovered entry. Removes the Radial. Otherwise, we're not creating a Radial. We are either destroying a ping This needs a little bit of well, actually, this highlight ping gets the ownership, so that's fine. This just says send a gameplay event to the actor, and it should be a ping. Just delete that out there. And the optional object in this case is actually the default ping data. And so we can now go and double check our create ping logic, which says any time that I receive this event, only trigger once is false, so it can be anything. Event tag needs to be ping. Anytime that we receive ping, get the optional object and cast it to, in this case, it says owning ping ability. All right, yeah, so there is a discrepancy in my logic somewhere. Just realized, remove the radial menu, send a gameplay event to the actor. The optional object is the context object. Wrong. I guess that should be optional object 2. Which, thank God they gave us 2. Object 1 equals this. Equals this. Object 2 equals context of a radio entry. This. Okay, moving back to event graph here. Let's get optional object. This goes here, this goes here. Okay. File that, create ping. So here we also want to cast this, because we know in this ping ability in particular that this should be data underscore ping. That will be our ping data. Then we trace and we create a ping. We come in here and we say, hey, if the thing that we were looking at has a ping component, that should be the ping data that we use. Otherwise, we should use the default ping data, which we've just replaced, so we don't need that. Okay, let's see if we can get this to go. It's not going to work straight off the bat. UXIF character. Might be the wrong actor. BP character UXIF. Oh, that's the foundational actor. Yeah, it needs to be this one. There's a ability system component here that allows us to perform a ping, granted ability, ping ability. We also need to grant the ping action. Or create ping, we called it. There is no input action for this. And there is no trigger event. Because it's supposed to be activated by default. Okay, so there is no start activated for that function. See here, it's like activate on action started or activate on action triggered. Triggered for continue. Okay. So this is input based actions. I actually want to assign ability actor info event begin play. I want to trigger that ability for the ping action like immediately. Or we could just trigger it the first time that the ping ability gets triggered. It's kind of like lazy loading it, but we'll think about that in a moment. Right now, I want to try this. Just print a string here. Print string. Put an F9 on there just to debug this. On event, on ability, blah, blah, blah. Let's hit play. So we're not getting a ping from this. Are we getting a ping from this? We are. We need to make sure that we call the parent function at the begin play, because pretty sure parent of this class probably does something on begin play at some point in the chain. Which is the event graph here. Begin play. See, if I had done what I was doing, then none of this would happen. Make sure you call begin. Make sure you right click and add calls to parent functions. Don't forget that. Okay, so this does happen and we are in knitting, but in the event that we missed it, on init ability actor event. So we bind to it in case it changes. Yeah. So all we want to do here is activate ability, scar gameplay ability system. Activate ability. Try to activate an ability. Ability to activate. Nope. Activate ability by class. Ping action. No. Create ping. Okay. Try that. So we are getting a ping, but it's happening at what looks like world origin. We are able to remove them, so that is good news. Yeah, so we didn't want to use this origin. We're basically hitting the origin of the world location. We need to call this in location so it's clearer what it is. In location, there we go. Okay. So we are able to do different types of ping, which is cool. There's a little bit of style issue on here, where it's when you stop hovering, it doesn't use the same style. And the stack is still the same. So we are able to do that. And then we should be able to look at, oh, we lost our object here. We should be able to look at our custom ping, which is the whole reason we were doing all of this. Go into the data asset, pick the weapons ping system, come in here, middle click, put a star on it. Come in here, put an exclamation mark on it. So that's an ambush here ping. It's unique to that actor. If I ping this one, this part of the logic is broken. So we need to go and fix that as well. We can do our generic pings, which is cool, but we can't do our contextual pings. So let's go and fix the contextual pings. So in the create ping ability, oh, I think I know what it is. This doesn't do anything. This function is missing its information because I didn't parse it over. Like so. And so now should be able to ping these. Ammo, oops, I just missed terribly twice. Star, weapon. Okay. So there is an issue in the ping ability. Create radial menu. It finds a ping component, but it doesn't validate this radial data. So then it just says, create me a null reference radial. Awesome. Middle mouse, got a cool radial. We can interact with these. That's very cool. We can interact with this. We've got a custom radial. Put that on there. Delete these. Very cool. 1, 2, 3. Let's do enemy over there. Let's do objective here. Objective. Enemy. Ambush loot. So one thing we should be able to do is just release. Just creates a ping. Find that interesting. Oh, that's not working now. Middle click, up, release. There's a bug in the code somewhere there. Hmm. To find out what's happening there. Context object is unknown. Entry widgets 2. Radial menu data entry widgets 0, 1. Looking for this entry. Just the first entry. Find element 0, which is loot. The output is loot. It does do a ping. We know that that works. DA ping. Cool. So all of this works. Then we come through to our wait event. Comes in here. We get this ping data. What kind of ping data are you? You are a loot. So that's cool. Then we do a trace. We create a ping actor. Come in and we say, hey, what was the actor? It happens to have a ping component. Yeah, so there's a little bit of a flaw in the logic here. We are essentially at the very end point determining if that thing has a ping component, and if it does, then we'll use it as the target. And so this actually needs to come from somewhere else. And sadly, I can't push the payload here to include, target data, gameplay ability, target data handle structure, polymorphic data location, vector. Yeah, so we can't push that vector into that. But that's not too bad. How could we handle this otherwise? We have got our radial menu doing those pings now, which is great. Very good. Happy about that, at least. We've got the radial entry shader. We have got the mouse delta. We have got the radial ping code. We have got a radial center. And then last but not least is 2 different styles to show the styling off. And so we'll get that done within the next 40 minutes of the stream after I fix this location issue. So, or this conflict of interests within the concerns of my blueprint code. Okay. So let's think about this. Activate ability. Yep, that's fine. Somewhat fine. So the only reason that we need this is because we need to track the pings in the parent so that they can be only 3. And the only reason that we track this second object is so that we can get the data that we actually want. Then we do a trace and create a ping. So what I could do is I could ask if the radial menu is not valid. Then we'll do a default ping. I'm going to do is I'm going to say if it's valid and the radial menu is not valid, that's the condition to take the top path. Which I will change to a branch. Let's try that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Radial menu, enemy, this, star, cool. This one, ambush, tap, tap. Okay. So now we have an issue where potentially this is valid. So it's falling down this route. Tap, tap, tap. Is this valid? It's like, it sure is valid. It's just not on the screen. And so there's an easy way to fix that, which is that when we remove our radio entry here, moved it from parent, we should really null out the reference so it can be garbage collected. Because we don't know which radial we're going to get next. There is a scenario where you pull this radial widget so you don't have to create it every single time. Okay, so we fixed that problem. Okay, so now we're on to the next song in our streaming list. Oops. Guess we're playing this one. And we are going to create some alternate styles. And that's what's going to fill up this second entry in our stream gallery. So we've created the pings. We've now we have finished the radio menu. It does all of the features that we wanted it to do. We just have the 2 new styles to create. So based on everything that we know, let's just take a quick run through what we've made. So we have a Radial Core UI system where we have a menu that takes a radial data that looks like this. It basically determines the appearance and behavior of any entry. So 180-degree entry that looks like this has this as a context object, which could be anything. It could be a ping, a voice line, an emote, or a weapon reference, or it would technically be anything. You might want to change that to a tag as well, and you could do that because then you could say like, oh, this is a weapon wheel. The only issue I think about with the system right now is that it could be more dynamic, and at the moment it can't be technically generated at runtime. There is a struct here or an array of structs that we're using, so you could generate this at runtime for like a weapon wheel, and maybe we'll tackle a weapon wheel in the future, or I'll come back to this off stream and just do an update stream. But anyway, so we have that. That's all data driven. We have styles, so we can have a center style that we want. Pretty much all of the materials are based off they are materials, they're not so the mouse position, for example, on all of this is based through the material shader graph. So we have a pretty cool shader here for that. Let's just take a look at this one. It just takes the mouse angle here from the mouse cursor position and some math with the view size. And we can also use the mouse delta if we were to manage that a little bit more. So now let's go and make a different radial style. Have I lost? I have. Huh. Okay, so we're going to look at Game UI Database for some cool references to radial menus. So this is Game UI Database. It's got a lot of cool stuff. Let's have a look at this one. Apparently I viewed this 16 hours ago. One of my favorite Game UI. Just sounds cool. It's got one of the coolest swing. Okay, so what you can do is you can somehow in here, you can search bar somewhere. Trying to find it. Yep. So here you can just type in radial menu and you can go screen filter, and then we can just look through these. So let's take a look at the alien isolation radial menu. So we've got all these interesting lines, and then we've got these specific like square border elements as well. Let's just try and quickly create that. So firstly, we would want a, well, it's still going to be a ping. I can't remember why this needs to be extended. Let me just double check. Because it takes the icon from the context. So that's fine. So we're going to duplicate this, and this will be ping, we'll just say S2, like style2, I guess. Or maybe I could just make a folder. So alien isolation. This here. I really enjoyed alien isolation. It's like, it's just, for its age at this point, it still holds up in terms of graphics and gameplay style. So we have this image. It's using a material instance dynamic, which it's not going to show us because it's a material instance dynamic. So that is here though. It's this radial entry instance. So we're going, for this, I'm just going to copy these styles over to where they're needed. So radial entry underscore icon AI for alien isolation. And let's just start creating the style for this, or at least a similar style. So firstly, we'll take the UVs and we'll take a look at those UVs. Awesome. Get an SDF box, plug that in here. We'll take a look at this. So now we have a box over the full size of the screen. The next thing that we want is to extract the position for the icon. So where did I put the icon's position? Just gotta find my icon. Where did I put my icon? Hello? Oh, it's all the way down here. Okay, so these are the UVs. Named rewrote node icon. This is the UV logic to place the icon at a certain position. So I need something essentially exactly the same, except different. I'm going to put it down here, and it's going to be for this box. So put these UVs in. I should just get a box up here, and of course it's over there. Let's take a look at this icon. Start previewing this node. So what we want, is this basically. I don't know why it's only appearing in white. I presume, yeah, okay. Might be stretched actually. But it's not the worst. We'll figure it out. Okay, so we have this square and we want the same thing. So we have this icon offset, which I do actually need to pull. Yeah, this is basically the main kind of bit. I think that's the add. Yeah, so this is the translation. And now if I preview this, I should get a square here. Cool. So that's going to be the UVs for our box. And then what we want, if I multiply this by 1 for the SDF outline and hit that, I should just get a box here. So that's looking cool. I could 1 minus this. Hello. Maybe I need to step it. Why are my UVs doing that? Maybe I need to clamp them. Don't know if that may, or saturate them, maybe, at least. Saturate my UVs. I actually don't know. Let's play this one. We have a box, or want a little stroke thickness here, 0.01. That looks fine. No, 0.01. Corner radius. Interesting. Okay, so now we have that little line there. Let's go 0.2, 0.4. Okay, 0.2 is fine. We can 1 minus this. We'll just do... Oh, that doesn't work. Why? Oh, it's 1 minus, that's why. It's not multiplied by -1. I do need to multiply this by -1 because I want it inversed. Okay, so now we have this. We're also going to... This is going to be really kind of ugly. You could just do this with a texture if you have the texture, but I am literally going to do this through math. So we're going to say a 0.8 size, and then if we subtract this fill, take a look at this, start previewing node. Why is it so big? Okay. Size. Box size relative to its container. So why does 0.8 make it bigger? Maybe 0.5 is the midpoint. Because if I play this now, yeah, okay, so I need a 2 vector. We'll go 0.4, 5. So now we get that that representation of what we were seeing in the alien isolation UI. So we've got this kind of element here, which is pretty cool. Apparently we don't need the saturate. Confused why that's gray and not white, but I'm not going to look into it too much. Let's get this quite thick. Let's make this 0.6. So that's looking cool. Okay, and then I could just name this now. Named reroute. We'll call this entry border, I suppose. Go and use that instead of the wedge. So here we have a bunch of code. Got a radial exponent that was just being applied over the top. We actually don't need that. We could add this entry border. Let's have a look. What have we got? We've got the wedge opacity, which reads as nothing. We've got the border opacity that reads as nothing. We've got a lerp that reads as nothing. We've got an add that reads as nothing. Why does it all read as nothing? Is this color? No, this is opacity. Icon mask. Cool. Icon opacity. But what if I just use the border here? Border. Cool. Icon. Whoa. The icon opacity is white. Can I saturate this? Does that bring it up to 0 to 1? Oh, this is icon. Wait, what's the mask? It should be basically on the outside of this in the black. Is just white. What? Oh, I know what's going on. The RGB. Okay, so let's just grab the RGB here. Just say it's 1. Put the border in here. Okay, you can just barely see it, but it's in there. For some reason, it's not very strong. So we need to come back down here and do something about that, basically. So if we say multiply this by 110, what happens? We get an actual shape. That's cool. Let's saturate it from here. Obviously, I would say it's too thick now that it's actually showing properly. So yeah, we'll go with that size. That's looking pretty cool. We'll just wrap this in border or brackets or something we can call it. I do want to scale it. Like I do want to scale the brackets down. And so we actually have a scale here. 1 by 1. 0.5 by 0.5. 0.3. Yeah, that's pretty cool. 0.3. 0.35. Cool. Okay. So next, we got our. We're just going to change this actually to be called brackets. It's going to make more sense to us later. Okay. Another thing that we'll want, I think, is this proximity here. I kind of want to fill the center in with a box. So this can be our bracket outline. And then we'll also have to make a bracket box. They'll be multiplied by the proximity, but that will probably happen later in the chain. We don't need the border mask or any of this logic as far as I know, or the arc mask, so we can just start getting rid of swaths of logic. Okay. We're going to let the opacity with the hover so that we get this center area being highlighted slightly. I'm going to pan the icon down a smidge. Then I just need a box, right? Scale is happening here. I wonder if I can apply this scale afterwards, because if I can, that would be cool. I can apply the scale afterwards. So the cool thing about that I like is I could actually name reroute this as radial position UV, or just radial UV, entry UV. Just name that entry UV, store that separately, rather than typing this every time. Entry UV. In here, we should just be able to add the icon offset and then scale it by icon scale. And then plug that into the UVs here. Awesome. Yeah, so I'm not even using this now. Icon, am I using icon anyway? Don't think I am. Get rid of all this logic. It's just icon offset. Entry UV scaled. Okay, so now we're just going to have one more SDF box, which just like it was just ramping up the. Actually, it's less instructions than it used to be with the Radial, so that's pretty cool. Right, let's get our box in here. So we've got our UVs. We're going to get a size in here. Start previewing this node. Let's go. Go 0.38. .33. Okay, so that's our bracket. And back in our opacity over here, we'll use that bracket. Just look at the reference quickly. They're just lighting the whole thing up. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to multiply the proximity with this. Then we're going to always have the other thing. So yeah, now we have an opacity. That's cool. It's a little bit small. So we need to work on this a little bit. Better. That is an opacity, technically speaking. I'm going to... What am I going to do? This 0.4. Okay, so over here... Why is that being multiplied by 5? Don't know. Does it? Not necessary. Let's do that. I think the multiply by 5 was because I was using a radial gradient before. And I'm no longer using a radial gradient. So this is cool. However, I want it to be less. Let's go 0.2. Cool. So now we have that UI, that's set up. Need to play with the colors now. So the colors are going to be not using any of the border mask or border color. It's going to be white and otherwise gold. So we'll just leave it at that. That's fine. White or otherwise whatever the icon color was. And so now I can just delete all the code that we're not using. So we are using angle span as far as I know. Are we using angle span? What angle span? Well, one way to find out is save this and then delete this. Yeah, so we're good there. Everything's to do with a wedge we can get rid of. Wedge. We've got the raw angle span here, but we are using that to determine. It's a good point. Yeah, it'll be fine. We'll keep that the way it is. We've got the radial arc here for the border mask and the arc mask, which we don't need. And we've got the wedge RGB, which we don't need. Got a debug mouse up there, that's fine. We've got the proximity. Okay, so this is a lot, I say a lot smaller. It's just different. It's just different. And that sorts us out for a new type of radial. So this is the radial AI. We're going to create an instance of this and use that in here. So now we have an entry that has a new style. Let's go and create a new ping system here. Copy this. Call this pings underscore AI. Different type of style. This is where I realize that this is kind of annoying, but it is giving me everything I need in terms of configuration. That's cool. Sort of. And what we can actually have a look at is some of these are using AI and then one of them is using a different style. And so I would like to at least test that. So for now, for a really quick way to get this just in, In fact, no, I'll finish this up. So in styles, we had radial menu generic. Let's move this in here and just call this radial menu underscore AI. And this radial menu will use this one. So you can see now how the modularity works, because we can have one style representing the entries, and we can have any style in there. So we could have like, the whole point of this was so that we can have like a fire element, a water element, a wind element. And so you can see here that's starting to take shape. The center of this needs to be updated. I'm just going to change this to AI. Cool. Recompile. Okay, so the center element of this radial needs to change. At the moment, we're using center generic. So we'll just copy that over here. We'll just say, instead of generic, we're going to use underscore AI. The style for this is significantly different, I would say. Center pip. It uses this material here, which we're going to copy over to our isolation style. Center AI. Okay, so we have this circle. Pretty cool. I want that wedge to be very small and actually a lot longer. So let's figure out how that's done quickly. We can look at the opacity here. We've got the arc ring. It has a feather. It has a size. What if I put this down to 0.1? I don't know what it did, but it's pretty cool. Arc stroke. I don't know what it did. I don't know what that did. I don't know what that did. I don't know what that did. Oh, that's pretty cool. 5-1. I don't know what's going on, but I love it. So we're gonna keep it. I don't know why I'm not capable. Full ring? What's full ring? It's that one. What's arc ring? That. Oh. Oh, interesting. Huh. Okay. Well, it's because I'm adding arc multiplied by arc ring, which is this close ring, and then we've got this outer ring. So that's basically what's happening, is we're adding this ring to this ring and then multiplying it to stay only within. So that's why we're getting two rings, which is kind of cool, but also not super the intent. What I want to do is actually, we can keep this. We can keep this. Actually want to get the UVs, and I want to vector radial value. And then we have these radial coordinates, which if we just multiply by 1, we can have a look at what that does. We vector to angle, possibly. Might need to minus 0.5 from this. Yeah. And then kind of want to like value step, maybe. No. So I need to go and do a quick Google UE5 starburst material. Yes, that's what I want. reading some. Sometimes it's easier to just use Blueprint UE. Yep, this is basically what I wanted. So Blueprint UE to the rescue. It's a website that's like how do you want to search, basically. What do you say? Yeah, search up here. So I found one. And it gave me this. Saves me a bunch of time. Could otherwise find out how to do it through formulas, Stack Overflow, or AI agent of your choice to give you the formula, and then you basically just reproduce the math equation, and then you get this. So I don't mind just using this for now. Cool. So we've got 15. Let's go 180. Let's have a look back at our reference real quick. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, sir, that does not work. 30, 60, 45, 50, 55. Oh, it's always doing it from this right hand. So we'll just go with something that looks cool. So around 90, and then I just need to thin these. Oh God. Oh God. That didn't work. There's thickness. Well, obviously I need to play with it a bunch. It's not going to work because it's just going to keep. These are just going to keep dividing down to become equal size within each one. So what you can do is take a look at this math and see which one is thinning it out. But we have, this is kind of an SDF. So it's kind of some sort of sign. It's F mod here to here. We get basically a sign for each one of these. So I'm just going to say, sure, it's 5. It's 5 by 90. Okay, so let's go back to our Radial menu here. Make sure that our center AI is using our new material that we've put in here. I mean, we could just use the straight up material. That's fine. Okay, so we have this. We're going to just named reroute this as pips. We're going to want to use pips somewhere up here. So this is our opacity mask right now. We're going to add, this is our arc ring. This is our arc that I want to thin out. So we'll just say like 1 degree. We have our arc here multiplied by our arc ring, so we get this cool spinning element. Our arc ring, we were playing with the size earlier. Let's say 0.51. What's the other value we were playing with? Feather, but that's fine. Keep this at 0.5. The opacity is here. Put these together. So now we get this. I just want to bring this in smidge. I do want to lengthen it as well. I think we're multiplying by this ring. The ring is not very thick. I've actually lost a bunch of information. I want to do something like this. I think this looks kind of cool. And then and then in order to, I don't know what this stroke does. Apparently it's supposed to be F width, but because we're multiplying it by this arc here, that's the result that we get. So let's go 0.2. Cool. So now we have this. Pips is this long thing. So I don't know why. I don't know. This is my opacity, so I don't know why it's not behaving. Oh, I guess because the color is becoming fill in the spaces outside of this full ring alpha. So what I could do is do this. Oh no, sorry, wrong one. Circle. Oh, that's pretty cool. Delete some of these. Take a look at that. Radial center here. Ah, right, now we're seeing what's actually happening. We should just be able to do this, because we only care about being gray or white. Go, so that's looking cool. And then in our radial menu here, we just pick the AI, and then we compile this, and now we have a different menu. It's not looking great. It's a little bit difficult to read, I would argue, just because there's so many of these lines. I want less lines. That could be better, but it needs to be thinner. Yeah, so now that's just a style choice, and then the middle has some information about it. And then to just quickly show that in Pi, we can create a little element that changes our radial menus. So how would we do that? What would be the simplest way to do that? I'd love to interact with a button, but I don't have time to make a button. So we're going to go and make a demo radial select. Add a basic shape to the floor here. Just have 3 of these. Each one will Oh, sorry, I don't even want to do that. I don't even want to do that. I will open BP demo, radial select, and in the viewport here, I'm actually just going to add a cube. I'm just going to scale that down. That's the floor. This is our collider. In our event graph, I had a bunch of logic in here that plays with the ping system. So I actually just don't need any of this. Just delete all of this. Don't need any of it. What we're going to do, don't need a ping component on here, and then we can edit, delete all unused variables, and that will just clean up the graph for us. Cool. So now we have a basic demo item, which I'm actually going to duplicate into demo template. So this is easier next time. Okay, so in radial select, we want to essentially affect the type of radial menu that you're going to produce. So get player pawn, get the system component, get granted, get abilities, get activatable abilities. Read the value of the variable activatable abilities. The abilities we can activate. This will include the class default object for non-instanced abilities and per execution instance abilities. And the actor instanced abilities will be actual instance, not CDO. Actor instanced, cool. So gameplay spec container. Spec, get gameplay ability from spec handle. This one, no? Great. Get ability. Get all abilities. That looks promising. Each. Spec handle. Valid. Past. Ping. Ability. Set default. Radial. Set radial. Set radial? Widget. Menu radial, no. Oh, great. Wait, who's deciding what the radial menu even looks like right now? I've completely forgot. Okay, so radial data. The nice thing is this is really quick to run through and debug and like iterate upon because everything is like just it's all separated. It's not like you're trawling through blueprint code. I need to let my cat out the door. 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, you're not trawling through blueprint code trying to find what's going on. It's all assets. Assets have roles. It's easy to read through. So in this case, the ability is, or should to some degree, be the one responsible for what radial gets drawn. So in here we have a create radial menu. We create a radial menu with L radial data, which comes from this or is otherwise defaulted. So what that basically tells me is in any of these cases, well, in fact, I don't even need to do that. I can just do it on init, draw, write to variable, default radial data, default radial data. And otherwise it will become this other radial data. And so back in our demo, we can set the radial data, set the default radial data. We can promote this to a variable. It can be exposed. And this is the radial data that will show. So by default, this will just be pings. Cool. And then what we do is when we overlap this actor, we just attempt to see if this actually does the logic. In fact, if we could say that we only want to do this if it's an instance. Which means it's not a class default object, basically. It exists as something that's been instantiated. Okay, and then so from here, we bring our demo object into our scene. And then I can pretty this up with some text and stuff later on, but basically in here now, I can say, this is default pings, this one is pings AI, this one is weapons. Take a look at that. Default pings, alien isolation style pings, and then this other one. So that's pretty cool. We have different styles of radial coming out of our system. Super simple to switch between to some degree, data driven. Okay, so let's do another one. Let's do a third one. So here we have alien isolation. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this folder, copy, paste it. Can I just duplicate the folder? Hello? New folder, I suppose. Oh, well, we need to decide what we're going to be inspired by this time. So let's go back to Game UI database, type in Radial menu. Oh, look at that. Music stopped just in time. So it took us 40 minutes to create the alternate styling sort of block out, which is cool. And now I don't know where my music is. Pop this on. Okay, so this one is 33 minutes long. So we'll attempt to go for 33 minutes and do another radio. I mean, yeah, you could create something like this if we wanted to, for example. I mean, you can tell that. I don't really need to do another one to show that. You know, you could create something like this if you wanted. You have a lot of control over every aspect of it. Do you have SDFs that allow you to gradient and do interesting things with pretty much every aspect? So I'm actually going to call it there because we are at 2 hours and it has been nice to do these little 2-hour streams. So we have our default radial. We can ping these. We can look at an object and ping specifics to those. We can ping on actors in the world. We can just ping in the world. We can also step on these to change our radial style. So here we just have a different style. Pretty cool. All controlled through materials. We can cancel these. If we hover them, we get a little overlap. And then here we've just got this other style. It's pretty cool. All right. That is radial menus. I don't want to do any more streams on this topic. I'm going to spruce this demo stand up so that as we build the gallery out, it just looks good and it feels good, works well. Open to suggestions for number 3. If none, I'll figure something out. We'll come up with something to do for the next one. Ideally shorter and probably in the new year. But in the meantime, thanks for joining. It was awesome building radials today and for the last few days. But we do have Radial Style 2, and I will do Radial Style 3 off cam and show that in another stream as a quick review. So yeah, thanks for joining. Have a good holiday, everyone. I'll be on holiday from now until January. So I might stream sometime in between there, possibly, but more than likely I'm going to be working on preparing assets for the new year. So yeah, happy holidays, happy new year. See you in the next one and/or on the other side.